today we're going to be, Gracie and I have started this new podcast sort of interview style series called Conscious Conversations. And our very first guest is the one and only Jennifer, JK Ultra. Many of you probably know her. She has a vast, extensive knowledge about all things galactic and conspiracy, but she got the receipts. So I'm we're so excited to, talk to her a little bit today and jump right in.
Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here. And this is so fun and full circle because it was about a year ago that we all met because I met both of you guys on the same day. And it's almost time for Conscious Life Expo again. And what a crazy year it's been. We've all done so many fun, cool things. So I'm excited to be here today and be your guys' first guest.
I'm very
So glad
excited.
to talk to you, Jen.
Me too. I'm so glad.
Gracie was the one that introduced us, and she's been such a big fan of yours for how long, Gracie?
Literally years, Jen. I have followed you in your Dolores Cannon videos, your videos talking about like just ascension, and you were one of the first people I saw where I was like, oh well, if she's doing it, then I can do that, you know. So
Aw.
you're very, yeah, very inspirational.
Oh, I love that. And I do feel like a lot of the people that like my content are going to be doing the same thing because everyone has like different information, different like area of expertise. And I feel like uh that's like I feel like a lot of the people that like my stuff are going to be then teaching, speaking. I feel it. I see it. It's the best.
And I think you're like very much a front runner and sort of, a catalyst for this movement that we're all seeing of like people waking up, people not being afraid to speak out, and most importantly, people looking for other sources of information and not just, mainstream media and like what's being fed, because intuitively we know that something's going on at so people are looking for other people that really understand this to explain it to them, people that they trust, and who better than you?
Aw. And I think too, what's important is kind of like having that bigger perspective because we do get other sources of alternative information, but a lot of them are more like negative.
Right.
But it's kind of like manifestation 101. We have to put our attention on what we want. So it's like that stuff is a little bit, a fine line. We want to know the crazy stuff that is going on in the world, but then at the same time, you don't want to feed into it so much. So you kind of have to have that different perspective. So I try to give a little bit more of the positive, bigger picture on all these things.
Because there's an underlying sort of, it's embedded with fear. Is that sort of what you're saying? Yeah.
I think so. And we know that fear is like pretty much the lowest frequency that you could feel. Like it's worse than like anger or rage or any of those things when you see it on the scale. So it's like the fear is the worst thing that we could do when we're talking about what's coming, what the plans are, where the world is going.
Right. And I think it's like both sides of the extreme. On one hand, you have like the news, and it's basically like all of the worst events accumulated and just like thrown at you, and you're like, holy shit. And on the other end, you like sort of go down this rabbit hole and you're like, holy shit, like what do I do about this? Like, there's so much to unpack here. So, finding a good medium is probably the wisest.
It's true. It's true. It goes both ways. The news is crazy, dark, and scary. And then you go down the rabbit holes and they could be darker and scarier, but then they seem more true, more messed up. It's always this fine balance.
Totally, totally. And so talking about plans and stuff, you know, agendas, galactic, all of that good juicy stuff. Gracie and I were talking a lot about Project Bluebeam, and like a lot of people don't know what that is, but we're seeing even on like the mainstream media is reporting like a lot more UFO sightings, and we sort of, maybe for people who don't understand, like what is Project Bluebeam? Is it like, are we really getting into closer contact with perhaps the Galactic Federation, or is it sort of this plan to lead us astray and to embed more fear into the collective? So we're wondering, what your take is on that, and like what do we do?
Yeah, give us the deets.
So, for anyone who's unclear about Project Bluebeam, this is based off of a book that someone had basically been exposing what this plan was that the government had behind the scenes. And so Project Bluebeam was this, it's a lot of different things, but overall is basically a lot of times simplified to a fake alien invasion that they would either use holograms or some technology to basically, what the conspiracy of it is that basically this would lead to people either uniting because there was an outside force, or being very controllable because there was an outside force. So this is where it becomes like a conspiracy. Now, what do I think is actually happening with it? So there's a couple of things, you know, Sarah Brexman Cosme, who you guys work with, we love her, she's the best. I did a hypnosis with her, which is actually on my YouTube, and we asked about Project Bluebeam. So we did like kind of like Dolores Cannon style asking questions. And we did ask about Project Bluebeam, and the information that came through was that it's pretty mixed in the sense that a lot of the people working in the government that are bringing this information forward, it didn't specifically say David Grush, but people like that, these whistleblowers, these people who are legitimate whistleblowers that we know for sure, definitely, like, you know, the ones at the hearings and all of that, they not saying specifically which ones, but the information was that a lot of these people are good intention. They have good intentions. A lot of them are star seeds. A lot of them, this is their purpose in life, is to bring this information forth. However, that's not saying that the government plan as a whole has good intentions, that it's pretty mixed, that there's some people who do have these negative intentions for control. And then there's some people who it is their life purpose to bring this alien news into the public. And, you know, so they're star seeds just in like a different environment than this like spiritual community. They're those ones that are in that government community, breaking through, being light warriors, light workers. Also, Elizabeth April's talked about it too. And she's talked about, which I really resonated with this a lot too, is that she's asked when in her GFL channelings about Project Bluebeam. And they talk about that the same thing, that there's kind of a little bit of both going on, so that there is fake scenarios. There is some ships that are either hologram. There's definitely ships that are government weapons, technology, all of that stuff, black budget stuff. But that a lot of people in the military are more the ones that are susceptible to these fake things. That these things that we're seeing that are government or fake or secret programs, that though the regular people abductions are like not as much that, it's more so happening within the government. So some of these people coming forward who have good intentions might have not had real experiences. They might have had experiences which are from the military industrial complex and are false information. So some of the people coming forward have honest intentions, but have been subjected to false narratives within their intelligence community or within the military industrial complex. And then as far as disclosure goes, which Elizabeth April said this came through in the hypnosis. I've seen this in other places, that basically it's happening on more so the individual level. So people are having individual experiences, mostly through consciousness, mostly through their pineal gland, less commonly through the third dimension that we're seeing. And that it's basically like going to be happening to people individually. And that's the real disclosure, because waiting for the government to say like, hey, here it is, they're probably never going to. And by the point that they do, it's going to be so annoying when they do, because it's going to be like, haven't you been saying this for how long? Like, it's going to be so frustrating when the government's finally like, aliens are real, guys. And we're going to be like, it's going to be so late. And they're just going to, which is probably the right thing for them to do, because a big event would kind of be catastrophic for society, for people's mental states, for people's belief systems. People, you know, once you see outside of Earth, you know that there's something more. nobody's going to want to live life the way that we're living. Nobody's going to be working and struggling and paying bills when we're like, dude, there's like a whole other world out there. Screw this. So I think that's why they're going to do it in this like slow, anticlimactic way. Some staged events, but regardless, those staged events that are happening to probably military people are leading us all towards being more comfortable with it. So it's kind of for like the regular people to become comfortable with the information.
Going back to what you were saying too, I actually, or a little earlier, so I ran into somebody whose entire family kind of used to work within the government, and she thinks that they use MK Ultra on her, and that they planted these alien invasions in her mind. She's like, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if this actually happened, or if this was something that like, because her family was or in the military, if she was more susceptible to be a part of the MK Ultra. But she was asking me, she was like, do you think this is real? Do you think like this actually happened to me? And I'm like, I can't tell you that. I'm sorry, you know. But I wanted us to maybe, if we have time, get a little more into that too. Because I know a lot of people have questions about that. At least people ask me on my channel about MK
It's
Ultra.
hard to say what's real. You know, it's hard to say what's real because we have physical experiences in the 3D are what we classify as real. So already the nature of a lot of what's going to happen with any extraterrestrial, anything or interdimensional or anything is going to be happening outside the third dimension. So we already are in the realm of like what is real. So it's hard to say what each individual person's experience is because also we can experience other dimensions through our pineal gland. That's pretty much the only way we can experience other dimensions. So that is part of this experience too. You know, someone could have a completely real experience that someone else in the physical didn't see. So it's hard to say what's real, but then it's also hard to say that what if something is some type of experiment of implanted memories? Or it could have been an actual a real experience in another dimension that feels like an implanted memory because it didn't happen in this dimension. It's just so complicated that, which is why I think like discernment, spiritual hygiene, checking back in with things out of this community, getting things like from the regular world is so important because it's very easy to really also not be able to tell sometimes the difference between subconscious mind communicating with you because it communicates in symbolism. So sometimes you could be having a meditative experience that is kind of real in the astral, but do you take it completely at face value, or do you just take the information and value from it and say, maybe that experience was another being? Maybe that experience was a part of my subconscious mind. But when you start getting into kind of the MK Ultra stuff, it's a very sticky line between mental health and schizophrenia stuff, because when you start to psych yourself out on your own reality and your own beliefs, you really can lose grasp of what is reality, what is true, what really did happen, what has been implanted, what's mine, what's someone else's. And that's when, like, you know, the losing grip with reality is the other thing that we always in this like community have to be so careful about, because there is things that happen outside of the physical and other dimensions. And then there is also the psyching yourself out of whether you can trust yourself or not is another thing that is a little bit of a dangerous area. So it's kind of, with your friend's situation, I think it would be best to kind of be able to take the information from it as if it was a symbolic message from the universe, but then also to be able to kind of say, the truth could be a lot of things. The truth could be all of this. The truth could be nothing. And kind of having to have like a little bit of releasing of it, of what is 100% truth in those situations, which is hard too.
And I think that's so important too, why it's important that all of us talk about it. And I think at least this time in history, I really think what's happening is this like mass education period where like not only are we having interesting experiences, but we're diving deep into like what consciousness is and like what that looks like and like what we're capable of as these physical beings with these spiritual gifts, you know. So very interesting time in history. And so I think it's really important that we even have these conversations and, you know. So.
Right, because like we're bridging, I think through dialogue, even like what you just said about there's a very big discernment between mental health and, spiritual awakening, and people really need to understand how to discern the two, as well as just like hearing conversations like this and like sort of being like, okay, like this experience happened to me, like how do I integrate it without, sort of losing sense of self and losing sense of like reality. But something that you said earlier that really made me question was, if I feel like this big planned alien invasion, whether it's Project Bluebeam or not, can either, like you said, unite us or be our downfall into control and sort of lower frequency energy. But that would also mean that a lot of systems in place would crumble because of that. Like, who's really in power? If there are beings in the sky sort of controlling this or are even involved in the slightest, like then religious institutions would also crumble because that was never said, that was never like spoken about. Like according to so many, there's a man in the sky and like he is the end all be all, like where do we go from there? So I think that so much could either come crashing down and we build anew, or there's just, I see like two paths, and it can either be like to lightness or to darkness, and that really depends on like how the collective is doing. And I sort of see both sides. Like I see a lot of people waking up, and then I see a lot more people, sort of honing into that fear frequency after something as catastrophic as like COVID happening, and people willingly giving up their autonomy and control of their self and their body.
Importance of cosmic conversations.
Yeah.
See.
And it's crazy too with these kind of, we all are seeing this kind of two ways that things can play out. And this is so crazy that this is what so much of the spiritual teachings have been about for the last, I mean, a very long time, because it does get biblical. So it goes all the way back, but even like our more like modern and new age stuff and alien related stuff, this split of the two worlds that we're hearing about constantly. And it's like, we always like wondered with like a lot of Dolores Cannon's work and a lot of New Earth, 5D, the split between 3D and 5D, all of these like different shifts in is it going to be New Earth or New World Order? And what's crazy is that it seemed so like out there and like, how could this happen? This is like kind of mind blowing. And now look at us coming into 2024, and we're like, wow, I can actually see the split of two timelines right in front of me of what is really possible, how some people are perceiving reality this way, some people are perceiving reality this way. And for me, actually, and I think this is also, I think my ayahuasca ceremony was at the perfect time for all. I went to like full neutrality before all of the like very polarizing stuff happening in the world right now. And like, I feel now it's not just the two lines. It's basically those two are one. That's polarity. And the other one is like being neutrality and being in flow and adapting, as opposed to like two extreme sides of every situation. Whereas like that's what a lot of people see that are on the sides, on the polarized sides. They see the split as like we're on the right one and they're the other one that's going to be on the wrong timeline. But actually the polarity of both, the extreme of both, is kind of seeming like, whoa, now us in this community are shifting kind of like, oh wow, it's not just two sides. It's kind of like, oh, it's not just good and evil. It's like the wholeness. We're seeing the fullness of it, the balance of there is light and dark, there is good and evil, there is nuance in every situation. And the polarity, I feel like, is the split between the old earth and this new earth.
Right, because divide and conquer has been, used throughout the millennia, right? So that's so interesting that you say that, because neutrality is in its very essence like love and just being and just accepting. And you said the two sides will always think that the other is wrong, but like what if the polarity is the plan and neutrality is on the other side of that, where it's just it's just being and being in love and being in light and just centered and not in fear and not in judgment and all of these other low frequency energies. And it's just, you know what I
And that's when
mean?
we start getting to the really evolved stuff with the spiritual path. And I think it's great because now we have such like a huge community everywhere. You know, there's so many people that are interested in consciousness and the evolution of consciousness, that it's like now we can kind of go to this next level where initially it was really just kind of like light work and like being for the love and light. And then the other stuff is kind of like a dark force or whatever. And now, you know, as we're going through our spiritual evolution, we're kind of like, oh, like even you can't ever just be all in light either. You need that shadow work. These other things come up. A big part of the lessons in life come from the hardships, come from the worst moments. These are what living and being human's about. So that's what I feel like we're all kind of collectively shifting towards now. Like initially we were all kind of going towards like the love and light. And now we're like, oh, this is like a much more multi-dimensional, colorful picture.
Absolutely.
So
What were
I'm
you gonna
actually I'm home right now, and all day today I've been making tamales with my family, and we've had some deep, deep conversations. Okay. And one of the things we've been talking about, at least I'm like this year, I'm putting it all out there. I'm gonna be me to the best of my ability. And we were talking about how like we learn from conflict, you know, and it's like we're reaching this point in our evolution where it's like, are we going to learn from all these not even mistakes, but all these actions that have these actions that we've taken that have gotten us here? Are we going to learn from it and move forward? Or like, how can we move forward? How can we take all of this crap that is on this planet right now and use it to make something better and like use it to move forward together, you know?
I feel like too, this is what we talked about on the GFL live that we did on IG and Instagram and TikTok. And this came from like a lot of the Pleiadian channeled messages that really like the most important thing that we have to do now on Earth at this time is bringing the value back to human life. And I think that that's kind of a lot of what coming to this like pinnacle of like so many things are coming to a head. It feels like the entire world right now is like a pimple about to pop in every aspect of every topic. And it's like, it really is getting to that point. And, you know, at the same time, it's like everybody needs a different breaking point. So, you know, it's pushing, pushing, pushing. The world is going to like more extremes. History is repeating itself, more extreme. And I really think that like exactly what you're saying, Gracie, is like that it's like we learn from the conflict. And, you know, sometimes the conflict needs to get that bad for some people to see it. And the conflict is going to keep getting worse until everybody can see it.
Well, we're ready for it. I was actually wondering if you guys have heard that like Mark Zuckerberg built this insane like bunker inside of an island in Hawaii that's like $20 million or something like that. Have you guys
Oh
heard
my
about
God.
it?
No, but
No,
I'm
but I
gonna
am very
FaceTime.
interested in bunkers.
I feel like something's coming, something big is coming, and you know, I don't know about the whole doomsday, but I feel and these people in power, like they know something that we don't, and kind of to go back on that like rabbit hole vibe, it worries me in some sort of way because I think, you know, the elite, they have knowledge of whatever plans are in place. And we can talk a little bit like more about like reptilians and like this as we like go in deeper. But I was just wondering like what's gonna happen? Like what are we about to get ourselves into? Like should we be prepared? Like my family at least, you know, my dad has we have like enough food because he really thinks that something's like gonna happen and like, you know, being prepared is like the best case scenario even if something doesn't, but like these huge like people. I'm sure Jeff Bezos has one too, and I don't know, American Horror Story was hinting at it, like some sort of catastrophic event is gonna happen where, oh my God. Stressing
See,
me out even talking about.
I have a thought. Tell me what you guys think. Okay. So here's how my mind works. So if there is an infinite number of timelines, there is an infinite number of possibilities, right? There must be a timeline somewhere where the people do wake up and recognize our potential, and we end up creating this like we end up working together for one, and being like looking at the elite system and being like, I'm done with this. I'm done. You know. And granted, I don't know what that looks like, but like there is an infinite number of possibilities. So collectively, as we help educate each other, or as we learn from each other and learn from our past, and also try to create a better future,
Mm.
I just how can we do this? There's an infinite number of possibility. How do we collectively choose the one that will serve and love and enlight? Have you guys heard of the 1,000 Years of Peace theory? Jen, you might.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So it's this idea of, as we enter into the age of Aquarius, and yes, history repeats itself. Well, we've reached the end of a cycle, right? And the beginning of a new one. So it's this idea of something within these next few years. This is gonna get weird, from what I understand. But this weird time that we're experiencing is going to propel us into a thousand years of peace. Of whatever is about to happen is going to shake us so hard to our core that will help us recognize who we are as interdimensional beings of light and love and darkness. You know, such an interesting time. But it's this idea of like, things might get weird, but from that weirdness, we will recognize what we're capable of. You know.
I agree with all of that. I think for sure, you know, I'm apocalyptic as all hell. So I'm into all of it. You know, I am very into like the concept of like the 2029, 2030 stuff, because there's so many things that point to this date, this time. There's a lot of different things. There's a giant asteroid. There's so many things in this, like from 2029 to 2030 that's going to happen, just that we already know of, and things that have been prophesized. Now, as we know, you know, the apocalypse is not necessarily the end of the world or anything. It's the unveiling of information is what it actually means. It means like an unveiling. It means things that aren't known. It means basically, you know, all the stuff that's in the shadows comes out. So I do believe, you know, both that there is a possibility that things could go completely to hell and everything could just like be, you know, the end of the world or whatever. So on that, I think the most important thing that we could do is, and like you're saying, Gracie, there's also the timelines, but the most important thing that we could do is like, you have to live your life so fully and like say yes to things, do things that you would normally be like, oh, I would never do that. Just do it. You know, what if the world did end in 3 years, or what if the world did end in 5 years? And, you know, you don't want to spend it worrying about that for sure, because then you don't get to enjoy that. But it's also too like us living in flow. And they say that like, you know, play, which is like when you're doing stuff without the outcome. The difference between work and play is that work, we're doing it for this outcome, and the outcome is business, and it's an exchange of money, an exchange of information, and furthering our career, furthering all this. But when we do stuff not for work and we do it just for play, we're already like completely really reshaping the reality. So if like a lot of people just kind of got into the state of like, okay, if shit's going to go down, then I'll be a pillar. I'll be in my strength, be able to be, you know, helpful to other people in whatever way we can to see through that. If there's anything we can do. I bet you that those billionaires don't even make it to their bunker in time, though. Just like in American Horror Story, the billionaires didn't make it. It was the witches that made it to the damn bunker.
Oh my goodness.
The witches made it there, but the billionaires didn't.
But I will,
So
yeah, continue, please.
and in that, everything was divinely, that's the other way that I see it now too. This is also like a big difference for me after the ayahuasca, is that like really the way that I saw it was that like everything is divinely perfect in the exact way that it's happening. So even the worst things that have ever happened in our life, the most traumatic moments, it said is to me in the ayahuasca, it said that this is basically the same thing as a miracle and as a synchronicity. To us, we only judge good things as miracles and synchronicities and like, wow, that's cool. But actually, all the bad things they say are the same exact frequency. It's all the same exact, and it's triggering all of these events to occur, and that it's all already like perfect the way it is, that the entire universe is. We have our free will within it, but the perfection of which, when we go into play, when we go into flow and we allow it to happen, um, is when it's going to fall into place the way that it's meant to perfectly. So, us doing those things, being in flow, being in like, you know what, if the world ends in 5 years, then you know what, I am going to take that trip. I am going to spend my money on this thing. I am going to order this thing to eat right now, and do these like anything that's going to make us happy in the moment probably will shift the entire timeline on the quantum level and would also just like, it's kind of like in tarot, the Fool card, that like innocence of being able to leap in, that being more contagious in the world, will probably do a lot more, for shifting people's reality of where they end up. Because then also the thing with the prepping, why I'm conflicted about it, is because then it creates a timeline. You're taking action in the physical to bring thoughts of the quantum into the physical world. So, that's why I don't partake in certain things like that. Having weapons and things like that. I'm all for, the rights of people, and I'll fight for the rights. However, I don't want any weapons that then there might be a timeline where I'm solidifying I might need that.
No, I
Everything's
totally
so
get
complicated.
that. And I also think, well, tell me what you guys think, but us talking about or helping people understand not to fear death. Like so many people, I feel like at least some people I've talked with, they link like this apocalyptic period with dying, like with a complete end. And I'm like, no, like death is just the beginning for one. Um, but it's so hard for people to understand that, to like wrap your head around it, to be like, even if all of this goes to crap, like it's the beginning of something else. Like it's like we are like energy is neither created nor destroyed. We are constantly evolving and moving, whether we're in this physical vessel or, chilling out in the astral. So,
Right. And like on some sort of level, I understand it because it's like fear of the unknown. And death of loved ones have caused so much pain. But like to Jen's point, like our conception of what's good and what's bad is only based on like our personal experiences and like the information that we've accumulated in this lifetime. Whereas like everything's a miracle, even like the hardest things that life throws at you are a moment of rebirth. Exactly to your point, Gracie, like this is either timeline, whichever way we go, whether it's neutrality, whether it's love and light, or whether it's new world order, everything will be like a sort of learning lesson and an opportunity for us to grow. That being said, I won't lie that the first episode of that season scared the shit out of me. And I think that a lot of like movies and alien invasions and like doomsday prep and like ignite that sort of like fear frequency and it's hard to navigate, and it's hard to stay in neutrality when it's like sort of a portal and almost like a vortex, and it's like pulling your emotions and creating that sense of uncertainty and maybe devoid of the most precious gift, which is life. We're here. A lot of things moving.
And I think too, with the kind of all the emotions of it, everything, we also like what you're saying is that it's all really about like the lesson. So it's like we're coming into this reality to experience human life, which is not really with these rules, with these terms, with these conditions, are not really available to us in other ways. So, there's also kind of like, without being numb to it or shutting down to it, also the appreciation of kind of like, well, this is the only time and place we get to experience things like this. And these are the only ways that we can really learn these lessons and have these experiences. So, and that kind of, you brought up the reptilian stuff before. So, the reptilian thing is it's a favorite topic of mine. It's very juicy. It's like the most juicy conspiracy of all. And because it's such like it breaks your mind in a way, but then also is completely makes sense and is completely believable at the same time. So it's like the perfect storm. And I am a believer for sure in this. However, my evolution of the understanding of all of these topics continues to grow, which I think is important when you're like truth seeking, is to not just become like a knower and to just know what's the truth, and to be still willing to like transform these ideas, even if they've been around for a long time and you've assigned your, beliefs to them. So I do believe that, there is forces, reptilian-like forces, that are manipulating this matrix of reality that we live in some way. And that comes up in a lot of different things, whether you believe it's reptilians or even if it's like in the Bible, it's more of like Lucifer kind of creates this hellscape place to have his pleasures or whatever. And kind of similar with like the reptilians are allegedly doing this to feed on our negative emotions because they're in the non-physical. So for us, food in the physical is physical. For those beings in the non-physical, food and energy is non-physical. So they need to get it from a non-physical source. So I do believe in that stuff. However, I do feel that it's like only a part of the story. And I feel like we have to kind of, or it is a part of people's journey, maybe not every person's, but like to make peace with those things, to make peace with this reptilian story, the dark forces. I'm not really a believer of actual dark forces of the universe. I believe that there's light, and then light can be obscured. And light obscured is because that's all we can also measure. There's a speed of light, there's no speed of darkness. They can't measure darkness. It's just an light being obscured. So that's the same thing as like, if there's a light here and then something goes in front of it and like creates a shadow, we're seeing the shadow of that thing. We're not seeing what this actually is, which the thing that's doing the bad stuff, even, reptilians, I believe as well. But you have to kind of make peace with it, is that like, and even with the whole Lucifer story, I do believe that like there's some aspects of consciousness that are brave enough, that are daring enough, that are crazy enough to want to create other scenarios for the expansion of the whole. So it is like a service in a way, like evil is in a way, it's either a service to the wholeness of consciousness, because something like reptilians creating a situation, or Lucifer creating a situation where all these horrible things are available to happen in this place, is similar to like, say, a scientist creating a quarantined thing to be able to see how something can grow and develop, how this bacteria can grow and develop, how this disease can grow and develop. And so I feel like the more that I continue on my journey, I used to be so pissed off, scared, ready to stop these reptilians, ready to fight them myself, ready to ban them, ready to bar them, ready to love them, ready to cloak them in white light. Like I've gone through all of these different stages, but now I'm like, gosh, like they're actually a very brave part of consciousness, a very evolved part of consciousness, to be able to take this density on, to teach all of us these lessons, to teach the entirety of consciousness lessons, so a lot of times when people do get it kind of into the good and bad races of aliens, everything is coming from an internal projection. So if you're very stuck in the good and bad of the aliens, that means that there's something inside of your inner world that is trying to find balance between light and dark, between the light and the shadow of the self. When you're looking out into the world and you're getting polarized by the situations in the world, that is humanity's shit coming to the surface. And then when we're getting triggered by that, that's also the spiritual war that we're seeing of light and dark is actually an internal war that consciousness is playing out through us. So if we want to like change the entirety of consciousness, it's like, okay, we need to address the shadow sides of ourself. We need to address, what about this reptilian nature is us as well, and also the perception of it, like with the grays and stuff. A lot of times when we're talking about like bad races of aliens, they get grouped into that because they are self-serving in a lot of ways, just like reptilians are self-serving, just like we're self-serving. Like, who are we kidding? We're all self-serving. As much as we care about humanity, we're probably still all a little bit more towards self-serving because this is the environment of survival in this world to get by and to live a prosperous life. But I think the same thing is it all comes down to like, this is asking us to reflect and heal the easy way. And then we know what happens when you don't listen to the universe, you don't listen to its signs, you don't listen to its messages, you don't listen to your guides, your angels, it starts coming through in the physical and you still don't listen. Then the universe does something crazy and either like puts you in a messed up situation, you're injured, you're sick, you're pulled out of your life, you lose your job. Like, so we got to listen while the message is still like coming in this way through just triggers and reflection. Because then when you don't listen, that's when the universe is like, all right, well, now I got to break your leg and you can't move for 3 months. And now you're going to have no choice but to change. So I feel like we're coming to that point. Humanity's coming to that point right now in their journey.
Right.
Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
I just want to just say something quick. It's so interesting that you said like humanity and it's I feel like the experience of humanity, us as humans, is like an experience of duality, good and bad, light and dark, and it's two different sides. And these reptilians are, like you said, like a reflection of the internal self and like the internal uh complexities of what it is to be human. It's to categorize, it's to assign meaning, it's to, judge and have to understand, as much as we understand ourselves. But I think a great thing of what you're saying is that like there's a spectrum and maybe we don't know, we can only perceive it with the experience and knowledge that we've accumulated, but there's universes of knowledge and we're maybe not privy to that. And so maybe we can't understand and we're trying to assign meanings and assign boxes and categorize like these forces or beings into certain boxes where maybe they just are what they are. It was just a thought. It was so interesting.
Yeah.
And I really loved what you said.
Oh, thank you.
Then
But yeah, well, you're going to
also
show
going
the
back to
book.
yes. Have you read this? Earth,
Oh
the
yeah,
Living Library.
oh yeah, I've done so much. Someone actually texted me about this book today too. I've done so much content about this book. It is so
I'm about
good. I love that book. That book does talk about the reptilian stuff, manipulating forces. That book also talks about how Pleiadians did play a part in it as well. That it wasn't just reptilians, there was humanoid beings, there was Pleiadians, there was a lot of stuff. That book talks about how basically, and the perspective that I get from it is that like, right now we're doing a lot of things because we don't know any better, things with AI and stuff like that are going to be in the future. Whereas that's what a lot of the stuff with like the Pleiadians, the Pleiadians are not completely only 100% innocent and only did good in their whole time. They also have played a part into this system that exists on this planet. And they talk about it in that book. And they talk about how basically the reason that they are helping humanity now is because they're karmically tied because of mistakes that their ancestors made with the creation of humanity. So that's the other thing too, when we talk about a lot of these alien races, we're talking about information that is so ancient. And a lot of these beings that actually did that to us, and I've heard this from multiple sources, also beyond that book, that like, especially to reptilians, but also Pleiadians, all of these things, what we're hearing is like ancient history. And these things have already evolved. Like some of these reptilians that helped create this matrix, they've already ascended and gone on and done their process and have healed from what their past was. So we also don't know what these beings' real stories are. You know, what if this reptilian story, we're seeing a part of it from our perspective, like you're saying, but then what if like the other part of the story is reptilians have gone through so many stages of evolution and consciousness raising and gone through all this stuff that we've gone through and gone through many different renditions of the universe. And now they're like, how about we do it really fast? We play the bad guy, speed this whole thing up, get the bottom of the level to just come on quick. Like this is like, we do stuff like this with kids and animals and things. We do stuff to make them do their evolution, their life processes quicker, you know, and it's like kind of like looking at like the cows, you know, which I love the cows. But if the cows are in the future super advanced and evolved and mentally like we are now, they're going to be telling the stories about those disgusting humans that were feeding on us for all of this time. And, you know, so that's why I think a lot of times when people get kind of stuck in the good and bad of these stories, we have to look at our own story. And there's a lot of beings along the way that would tell a story about humans worse than the reptilian story.
You know, I find so interesting is that like for some reason, and I think that since my spiritual awakening and my sort of journey down the rabbit hole, I've noticed so many references to reptilians, to the Galactic Federation in pop culture that I've never noticed before. I don't know if you've seen the movie Zathura. Do you remember Zathura?
Wow.
What with Josh Hutcherson and Bella Swan? Okay. Anyways, it's a movie about these little kids and their house sort of goes into space and then they're attacked literally by reptilians and they call them reptilians and they're these like huge lizard alien beings and they're like the villains, whatever. But also in the opening scene of Lilo and Stitch, it's I feel like I should just share my screen and like show you guys because like it blew my mind when I rewatched it a couple years ago um after you know awakening and whatever. So crazy, so crazy. And I think that maybe there's that theory of like whoever's in charge or Illuminati, they need to hint at things in order to like free themselves of, and that's why it's in music, and that's why it's in literature and movies and all of these like alien Project Bluebeam, like alien invasions, and like humanity is, you know, going to shit. Sorry for my cursing, but it was so interesting after I started Galactic Federation of Light Apparel. I see the scene and it's like boom, like something's happening here and things that I never paid attention to as a kid. So crazy. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna share my screen.
I know what you're talking about.
You
It's
know what I'm
wild.
talking about. Okay, thank you. I'm not crazy.
They're literally telling you there is a Galactic Federation. It is subliminal programming. Am I saying that right? Tongue twister. But they literally, there's a couple different scenes actually in Lilo and Stitch where they talk about the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So
do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, this is crazy. Let's talk about it.
The Galactic Federation headquarters. So, you know, it also shows up. It also shows up in Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Where they're like the bad guys, but that's because Rick is a intergalactic criminal. So of course, you know, so there's also what's also interesting is there's a lot of different versions of stuff too. Like sometimes it's the Confederation instead of the Galactic Federation. So we hear this pop up in a lot of different things too. A lot of stuff from like the 50s and the 70s talk about a galactic confederation. So there's a lot of,
Mm.
also it's in one of the old Dolores books, which I actually have here, in one of the Nostradamus books, I think it's in volume 2. They talk about that in the year 20, I should have it highlighted. I have so many things like highlighted. In the year, here we go. That in the year 2030 is when basically we become a part of the Galactic Federation. So this was in 1987. She moves someone 100 years into the future to 2087. He's living a future life as a woman on Earth, and the world is completely changed. There's only 10% landmass. Everything else is water. There's all like, basically he says that people from Sirius, Aldebaran, Betelgeuse, and 15 other star systems have contacted us. We are now part of the Galactic Federation and one of its newest members. The requirement for membership into the Galactic Federation is known to the plan of the creator, is to know the plan of the creator, to follow the plan of the creator, and to be part of one galaxy consciousness. And that was in 1987. That
Baby.
And who is the creator? Is that source? Is that God? Is that the GFL?
So to me, the creator is God, is source. However, there might be something beyond that, you know, there might be a creator to us could be a fractal of source, and source could be something even bigger, which is like what it says in that book that you were just holding, Gracie, the Earth book by Barbara Marciniak. It talks about how there's a lot of creator gods and there's a lot of beings that created, we're creators. So we are creating AI, we create other things in life, we create art, we create all different things. So we're creators, and it's an extension. God is a creator. That breaks up into other creators. They create realities, they create realities, they create realities. So the creator to us is God, is source. In that book, they say more so they call prime creator, and they say that that's above even what they have access to or to comprehend. They just know that when people in our level of life, human and starseed people, when they have an experience with the creator, with God, that it's still such a tiny fraction of what is actually capable, because they say even getting any more of that God energy experience that we have, we would explode, we would combust, we would cease to exist, because it's so much bigger than what we even understand as a creator. So I think it could be kind of like a pattern, you know, like there's like, we have our creator of our universe, but there might be a creator of that creator and a universe within it, you know?
That's
There's so many pieces to this puzzle, man. Oh my gosh.
and things that we can't even fathom, like our tiny human brains. Like we think that we know it all, but like there's just so much to uncover, and so much that we don't even know that we don't know.
And what
And
blessing that is to be able to learn and to uncover.
I
right.
know.
And
to experience.
back to your point, like, you know, not having the sense of like rigidity in the things that we think that we know, and like always being open to like new sources of information, and belief systems, and you know, sort of like you said, remaining in neutrality and like letting it flow to us and absorbing it as much as we can, and taking what resonates, and like maybe not taking what doesn't resonate and makes us feel some sort of way. But here we are. I think, you know, having conversations like this is really the catalyst for change, because talking about things like this, like speaking it into creation, and like educating people that care to know and maybe aren't so stuck in their belief systems, and just like are curious, that divine intelligence and that innate, you know, connection to source. Um, that's what we're here. We're here to learn, to be students of life. Right?
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. That was great.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I was just Gracie, do you have any more questions?
No, I was gonna say to kind of close out this episode, I'm sure there can be more. Because this is
So good.
fun. And I love how we bounce off each other, but I think we should close the episode with the video of the Galactic Federation
Yes.
from Lilo.
I got it. Okay, ready? The pressure is on, ladies.
Planet Turo.
Read the charges.
Dr. Jumba Jukiba, lead scientist of Galaxy Defense Industries. You stand before this council accused of illegal genetic experimentation.
How do you plead?
Not you. My experiments are only theoretical, completely within legal boundaries.
We believe you actually created something.
Something. But that would be irresponsible and unethical. I never, ever make more than one. What is that monstrosity? Monstrosity! What you see before you is the first of a new species. I call it Experiment 626. He is bulletproof, fireproof, and can think faster than supercomputer. He can see in the dark and move objects 3,000 times his size. His only instinct to destroy everything he touches.
So it is monster.
Just a little one. It is an affront to nature. It must be destroyed.
Calm yourself, Captain Yantu. Perhaps it can be reasoned with. Experiment 626. Give us some sign you understand any of this. Show us that there is something inside you that is good.
I didn't teach you that. Place that idiot scientist under arrest. I prefer to be called even genius.
And as for that abomination, it is the flawed product of a deranged mind. It has no place among us. Captain Gantu, take him away.
With
Anyways, I think that's so
That
good.
is exactly what I picture the Galactic Federation would be. Like,
She's kind of giving grays, no?
Yeah.
there's many species of Greys, so I definitely,
Yeah.
I mean, my personal experience with the Greys, they were more evolved and they were here to help humanity. They weren't a part of the, but that's a story for another time, guys.
Yeah, we should talk about the Greys next time.
That would be fun. I'm so down for that.
That would be
For
fun.
sure.
Jen, you were an angel. Thank you so
Oh,
much
thank
for
you.
giving us your time today and just for sharing your wisdom with us and for chatting with us and bearing with us.
No, you guys are great. Thank you for doing this. And this was so nice. Wonderful. I'm glad we got to do this today.
Too.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
have to plan one for 2024. So
Yeah, we should talk about the Greys. That'll be fun.
I'm down. Oh, great. We already got our plan.
Perfect. Bye, ladies. Thank you so much for
Bye.
Bye, guys.